Normal Christianity is Spirit-led Christianity, and this is Living in the Spirit. In the episodes of Living in the Spirit, we're going to go on a journey and discover what living free really looks like. Is it possible to live a life by design, full of purpose and impact? Do you desire for more meaning, more peace? We're going to learn how to live an unrestricted, spontaneous life. And we'll discover our true nature and purpose and access the life we're meant to live. Isn't it time to live life different? If you desire to be mentored and shown the keys to living an epic and overflowing Christian life, then join me for Living in the Spirit. Because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. Living in the Spirit.
It forces you to think from a different place in the mind, another part of your being. And what they would say in ancient times, or I should say the Eastern Church, is it forces you to think noetically, from the nous, from the eye of the soul, not from the intellect of the brain.
So is that what it means to be transformed by the renewing of the mind? Is that kind of?
Exactly, absolutely. It is not intelligence or intellect. It is the mind of the soul, the heart of the essence, the center of your being.
So you're okay. So that's what that means. You're shifting it, and now you see it through this way, and you're perceiving it correctly now. And so is that why you're able, Ted, then to see and be awake and watch the soul in a way and resist it? Is that what that, like, because what I want to know is the soul really our enemy? Did Jesus defeat the works of Satan? Because Satan is the accuser, right? Isn't that what his name means? So did he defeat the works of him so thoroughly that then the real enemy that he needs partnership with is that soulish realm? And if we don't ever get out of thinking from that, then we never escape his influence. Or can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Well, the soul itself is not the enemy.
Okay.
That the enemy penetrates the soul.
Okay.
That our thoughts, that noise in our brains that we take as ourselves is quite often the assault of the enemy.
So it's the suggestions and the thoughts are the enemy.
Precisely.
And it's when we allow them to penetrate and become, and then they become something, right? Is that what you're saying?
They take over. They take us over. Let's say you start the day in a bad mood, just because you have a negative thought about imagining what might be happening. So you're distressed all day and you take it out on other people, and it just becomes who you are. When at the front end of that, if you had chosen to recognize that I'm not going with that, that's imagination, you would have had peace and joy. And
got it. So that's the vain imagination he's talking about. Take every thought captive, casting down vain imaginations. Is that what?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on that point, the ancient church, of course, believes absolutely in the reality of evil, but evil has no power except the power of suggestion.
Got it.
So, you can be strong and face off with it rather than be terrified by these ideas, of that kind of darkness.
Yeah. Is that what Paul's talking about then in Galatians 5 when he's talking about, when we let those thoughts penetrate, it will produce all those things, he gives that laundry list, and he says, but when the Holy Spirit controls that, then he produces something, right? And so, yeah. Okay.
The Holy Fathers were extraordinary psychotherapists. They understood, and I'll just give you the 3 steps.
Okay.
There's a suggestion that comes to your mind.
Got it.
And then it comes to a new level of what we call assent, as in, agreeing with it. You let it in, you dialogue with it. And then comes captivity,
okay,
in which it takes over.
Okay.
So suggestion, assent, captivity. And each phase of that, you have an opportunity to get out of it. And to give you a graphic example, if you haven't heard this before, the Holy Fathers say it's like a snake getting its head under the door and is about to slither in. You cut off the head of the snake at the door, right?
And that's the suggestion.
That's right. And then you are free from it. But we are constantly dialoguing with everything going on in our heads, however random, and then becoming captives of it. You know, people eaten up by negativity are completely imprisoned in the dungeon.
Well, and you know, it's so funny because I was going to say, I read somewhere that they say the average mind thinks 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And that seems kind of crazy, but that's 35 thoughts a minute, 35 to 40 thoughts a minute, which seems pretty reasonable. And so if that's the case, Ted, and it just seems daunting to people when I bring that up in our workshops and what have you, because I talk about that. I want to know from your perspective, what would you say to somebody who says, that's 60, how do I control 50,000 thoughts? So I cut the head off every time? And your answer is?
You live in the inner sanctuary of peace, where those thoughts just sort of pass by and you don't get on the boat as the boat passes by, which is a saying from the Centering Prayer Group, that it's not a matter of fighting with them, it's just a matter of not being them, not taking them as yourself. And so the noise recedes. Because as you say, all that number of thoughts, you know, where's the peace in that?
Right.
And again, Saint Seraphim of Sarof says, acquire peace in your heart and you will save 1,000 souls. Just becoming a peaceful person. I would say one other thing about the thought issue, there's a special spiritual word, and that is diakrisis, which means discernment, discernment of thoughts. So it's not blocking and fighting every thought, it's discerning. Where's this coming from? You know, is it from God? Is it from my ego? Is it from a darker place? And then that's triage, if you will, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's a sensitivity to energy, you know, a taste of something. As you know, one of the key elements, this is what I teach frequently, when you begin to realize how toxic negativity is, as opposed to just a habit that we have acquired for life, we've seen it all around us. When you begin to realize that it's poison, then you have a dislike for it. So that when you become impatient, irritated, instead of that being the pattern of your life, it becomes something to not be.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of liberation. Talk about freedom, you know.
Yes.
That's the glorious freedom that's available to us.
Okay.
That we are in such need of cleansing ourselves from the culture.
Okay.
We even begin to be on the path. In other words, it's getting on the way to the way.
Wow. So it's like the on-ramp to the way.
That's right.
Okay.
You have to get this stuff out of it. You know, if you watch The Walking Dead every night,
Yeah.
you know, the vile horror of this. That's you know, that's a level of pornographic violence that's beyond anything we've ever seen.
I've never seen it, but I felt it. Like I could drive into the city when they're filming, and I mean, people say you're crazy. They think I'm kind of out there, but I'm like, I feel it. Like I feel it in the atmosphere.
Well, see, that's the kind of sensitivity I was referring to.
Okay.
And we become more sensitive as we become more purified. I mean, otherwise we're so beaten down with it that we can't tell anything anymore.
Yeah.
You know, whereas if you actually saw one of those episodes, it would take you a long time to recover. You know, and that's how it should be with everybody.
And people are gorging on that one season at a time on Netflix, and you say one episode that's years of recovery. So and actually I want to talk about that recovery, because as you were talking about, I'm going to kind of backtrack, the suggestion, the extent, the captivity. Okay, so is this where repentance comes in? Is this where because I want you to talk about what is sin. And like, if you do go down this road of suggestion, assent, and captivity, what's your way out? How do you get out of it?
The way you get out eventually is to make the choice at the right time.
Okay.
You know, to catch it in the moment.
Okay.
And what typically will happen for a long time is you catch it after the moment, right? And you look back and realize, oh, there was my chance again. And so you try again and again and again. And, that's confession, which is a lost spiritual opportunity in Protestantism. Confession is an extraordinarily powerful thing, because that's what you're confessing, is all those times where you didn't manage to make the right choice and fell again and again. And you can imagine, to be given the certainty of absolution, forgiveness, to have that organically experienced, to release it. Imagine the healing that is.
Yeah, because isn't that what he said? He says he's faithful to forgive if you confess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the difference between confessing, by yourself in your room in the dark, and confessing before someone to Christ, is everything, because their pride has to really take a bow.
Okay, so that's what you're saying by the art of confession that we know, like from the more orthodox.
That is correct, with the priest standing right there.
That's real deal then.
That's right, and because who wants to do that?
Nobody.
That's right. That's where a new level of humility comes in. See.
Got it.
But then you also enter a new atmosphere where there's a tremendous sense of forgiveness. The liturgy begins when the priest comes out from the altar, bows to the people, and asks for forgiveness from them.
How many leaders do that? Or how, in that position?
That's right, exactly.
Wow.
That's the mystical world.
Okay.
That you enter, the atmosphere, the way of being, that is so different, and that is profoundly transformational in healing. But let's see, we've reduced confession to the caricature of the Catholic thing. Say 3 Ave Marias and then go do it all over again.
Yeah, well, that's what, when you said it, that's what went through my head. That was that's what I thought.
Yeah, and that is, again, just a disintegrated version of Christianity, which is quite different than what is experienced in the Orthodox Church, where the fathers speak about the gift of tears. When you weep over, against you alone have I sinned. That is a self-knowledge that can change things.